It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks for joining me this morning. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. And over the next hour, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of real estate stuff here on this program. And if this is your first time tuning in, let me give you an idea of what this show is all about. I've been in the top 1% of agents in our market since 2009. And I like to take this opportunity to reflect on the things that I experience as an agent in our market. I like to go over national, regional, local news, and then tie that into the low country so that if you're considering buying or selling or investing in real estate, or if you just want to stay up to date with what's going on in the real estate market, then you have some information that you could use to your advantage so that you can stay informed and make some right decisions. So I've got a lot planned this show. Let me take care of some housekeeping items first. If you're considering buying or selling real estate, I would love the opportunity to work with you. Please go to my website, which is probably the best way to contact me, listingsincharleston.com. And on that site, you can take a look at everything I have for sale, take a look at what I've sold in the past, which we're continuously updating. You can read some testimonials from past clients, or if you're considering selling your home, click on the Sell Your Home tab, and you can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee. And that very simply states that I will sell your home in 59 days or less, or I'll sell it for half my commission. I'll sell it for 4.5% commission. There are some restrictions to that program. I do want to make that caveat here on air. It doesn't apply to everybody, but as long as you're somebody interested in selling your house and we're willing to do some things to prepare your home for sale so that we can enter the market properly, then that incentive absolutely applies. So the website for that, again, listingsincharleston.com. Let me tell you what I have planned for this show this week. It was a good week, kind of a stressful week, dealing with some closings right now that aren't going very smoothly, and unfortunately, closings rarely do. So I want to spend a lot of time talking about the closing process for both buyers and sellers. I really want to give everybody an idea of all the contingencies that we typically have to work through in order to get a deal to the closing table. I want to talk about some things that can go wrong. I want to talk about what to do when they go wrong, and just prepare everybody for that process. I think a lot of us like to breathe a sigh of relief once we put a home under contract, either as a buyer or a seller. And that's good. And it's an important milestone in the process, but it does not mean that the process is over. There's a lot of work that goes into getting a deal from ratification to closing. So I want to talk about that process at length. We're going to do that a little later on in the program. What I want to do first is toward the end of every month, I really like to go over stats in our market. So I'm going to talk about Charleston County, Berkeley County, Dorchester County. And then I'm going to also talk about our national market, what's going on nationally, and how do we compare to that. So that's actually what I'm going to do right now. Again, if you'd like to reach out to me, listingsincharleston.com is my website. You can contact me through that, or feel free to give me a call. Write down my number, 843-345-1273, 843-345-1273. All right, so let's talk about what's going on nationally first. There was a report that came out that says that July sales reached its all-time high in 2014. And that's great. And that's really what we expect as a market. We expect July, June, August to be very high closing months in relation to the rest of the year, right? Kids are out of school. It's summer. It's when people have time to travel. It's when they buy primary residences, second homes, investment properties, so on and so forth. So they said that pricing was up, but overall sales were down 4.3% compared to this time last year, which is interesting. Yes, we had a very hot July in 2013, well, both in terms of temperature and sales, as we always do. And my God, it was a hot week here in Charleston this week. But the interesting thing about sales is that although there were less of them, part of the reason for that is a decline in distressed sales. And I'm going to get to that because there's just less distressed inventory out there. But this one journalist had an interview with the chief economics guy over at the National Association of Realtors. His name is Lawrence Yun, and this is a guy that I respect. I really respect his approach to sharing information about our market on a national level. He's not overly optimistic. He's not overly pessimistic. I think he's just very fair. And I like the way that he delivers material, because a lot of real estate agents don't do what I do. They don't spend time analyzing the market, looking for trends, and sharing that with their clientele. They really just go by what they see or what they read. They don't really formulate their own opinion. And so I think he does a good job of helping those agents that don't really spend the time analyzing the market to help the clients. Because really, at the end of the day, it's all about informing the public with the right information. So here's what he goes on to say. He says that the number of homes for sale is higher than a year ago, and timber price increases are giving prospective buyers less hesitation about entering the market, and more people are buying homes compared to earlier in the year. And this trend should continue with interest rates remaining low and apartment rents on the rise. And he says, although interest rates have fallen in recent months, median family incomes are still lagging behind price gains, and mortgage rates will inevitably rise with the upcoming changes in monetary policy. So, obviously he hits the nail on the head. We, as a market right now, locally, are suffering from low supply, and nationally, we're still suffering from tight credit standards. And those are hurdles to full-blown recovery. But I've been saying for several months now, probably close to a year, that although inventory is reducing and that's causing buyers to make quick decisions about buying real estate, you couple that with the fact that there are low interest rates right now, and it means that we're going to recover, which means that prices are going to increase and overall our market's going to correct itself. But we still need economic growth. We need job growth in order to support getting to that next level of recovery. He goes on to say that distressed sales, foreclosures and short sales obviously, only accounted for 9% of closings in July. Now, let's compare that to 2009, by the way, when closings for distressed properties were like 30%. It was a little over 30% in 2009. We have come a long way since then. So that's part of the reason why we're not seeing as many sales. We don't have a lot of investors right now that are gobbling up huge amounts of inventory. A lot of investors have already done that. So just something interesting to take into account. So, fast forward to now, and I did a show about, maybe 2-3 months ago where we talked about the just overall supply of distressed inventory. And I think at the time, I have to look at the numbers again, but I think the total amount of inventory available for sale was around 9%, 5% being short sales, 4% being foreclosures. It's a very low number compared to where we were at the bottom of the market. So now let's tie all this information into where we are as a local market. Again, we're just talking about numbers, stats, trends, all that good stuff right now if you're just joining us. And if this is something that you'd like information on, you want to know what's going on in your specific area, your neighborhood, give me a call. Happy to help, happy to tell you what's going on. And I have a lot of great tools at my disposal to just send you information on a recurring basis so you can stay up to date with things. Again, listingsincharleston.com is the website, or give me a call, 843-345-1273. All right, so let's talk about how this all ties into the Charleston area. I read this interesting article a little earlier in the week, and it was talking about all the myths in real estate. And they said myth number 5, all real estate is local. So that kind of caught my attention because I'm a firm believer that all real estate is local. I think that any professional in this industry firmly understands that real estate almost is neighborhood to neighborhood these days. This is what this article says. It says, it wasn't too long ago that the way to make profits in real estate was to study the local market inside and out, local conditions such as wages, unemployment, and population growth, and that would dictate the direction of local home prices. Not anymore. Real estate is much more of a global phenomenon today, says this particular agent from Prudential in New York, and it says the internet and social media age have drastically altered the business, and that international buyers accounted for 7% of all U.S. home purchases during the last 12 months, and investors accounted for 20% of sales. And many of these buyers are paying all cash, which is driving the price sky high. There's a lot that I can pick apart just in that short amount of sentences. And I'm going to do that next. I'm going to tie that in to what's going on with our particular market. You know, obviously this real estate agent is a New York-based real estate agent. And for some reason, this comes across as being the norm nationally when it's not. New York is popular for people all over the world. And Charleston is getting to be that way. And I know that because I have sold property to international buyers. But this is certainly not the way that real estate, in my mind, works. And so I want to share that, and I want to share local information with you next. Coming up, this is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Again, if you'd like to contact me, listingsincharleston.com, or feel free to give me a call or text me, 843-345-1273, and we'll talk about your specific needs and see if there's a way we can help you out. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 8 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. Thanks again for joining me this morning. If you're just tuning in, we were just talking about the national real estate market and all that's going on there. I read some reports and an interview from Lawrence Yun, which is the Chief Economic Advisor for the National Association of Realtors, and just shared some really positive, good stuff about what's going on nationally in our real estate market. So the quick recap to that is that sales are up. Sales are at an all-time high this year for July. If we look at where we are right now compared to last year, sales are actually down about 4.5%, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't have quite as many investors gobbling up inventory. You know, if we look at the number of closings and the percentage of closings we had in July that were distressed sales, it was only 9% of the inventory. Compare that to 2009 when it was above 30%, and we've certainly come a long way. If we look at inventory across the board, nationally, we are in a seller's market. We're at about 5.5 months worth of inventory. A balanced normal market is about 6 to 8 months worth of inventory. So we are nationally kind of on that cusp of being a seller's market. And that's certainly the case here in Charleston. What I'm going to do next is talk about Berkeley County, Charleston County, and Dorchester County. I want to go through specific numbers for those of you that listen that enjoy this part of my program. About, once every month or so, I really dive deep into the numbers and the stats, and I let you know what's going on in your area. But as I also mentioned last segment, there was this article that came out that is saying basically that real estate is no longer local. You don't need to research local market conditions because there are so many websites out there and tools available to people that will just tell you what to do and where to invest. I do not subscribe to that. I agree with some of it in that Zillow and Trulia and all these websites are fantastic tools for people to look at so that they can start to analyze some markets. But in my opinion, it does not replace a well-qualified, experienced real estate agent that is engaged in the practice of helping people buy and sell real estate every day. I'm sorry, I know that Zillow has a good grasp on everything for sale. I am not a computer, but I can tell you that there are some fundamental issues with this website, Zillow in particular, and I promised myself I wouldn't get on my soapbox about Zillow today, but I will just say this. There is a fundamental issue with some of these websites in that they are just doing the best they can with the information they've been provided. So just as a quick example, the Zillow estimate. If the Zillow estimate on your home appears to be way off, it's because it is. Zillow has no idea what your home looks like on the inside. It has no idea of the condition or the upgrades, and they're just comparing it to other homes in the area and drawing some statistical analysis from all of that. So that's the whole roundabout way of saying, if you're interested in what's going on in the market, let me know. I can set you up with some very specific tools and resources, and I can do it all by email to where you receive information on what's for sale and what's sold in your neighborhood. It creates a statistical breakdown of the average days on market, difference between list price and sales price, gives you pictures to look at so that you compare your home to theirs, so on and so forth. Really easy to set all that up. So feel free to give me a call or go to my website and I'll set you up with that. It takes 2 minutes. It's very easy for me to do. Listingsincharleston.com is my website, or give me a call, 843-345-1273. And while you're on that website, if you're thinking about selling your home and you want this information, but it's for the purpose of putting your home on the market at some point in the future, click on the Sell Your Home tab. I've got some information there about what I do to market properties. Certainly not everything I do, because that's proprietary and I only share that with people in person. But it also has information on my 59-day home sale guarantee. And that very simply states that I will sell your home in less than 2 months, or I'll sell it for half my commission. I'll sell it for a 4.5% commission. So give me a call or contact me through my website about that, and we'll go through all the details. 843-345-1273 or listingsincharleston.com. All right, so let's talk about what's going on in our market. You know, I'd said last segment that low supply, the fact that we're in a seller's market, coupled with tight credit standards, really are still some hurdles overall to full-blown recovery. And that's what's causing prices in the short term to rise, just a lack of inventory. You have more buyers right now than they feel they have available inventory. We're just not putting new listings on the market quickly enough to balance that out. But more importantly, we do not have that full-blown economic recovery to support higher prices. You know, if you look at, just really quickly, if you look at the U.S. Department of Commerce, they reported that GDP grew 4%, I believe, on an annual rate versus the first quarter of this year, and that the first quarter wasn't quite as bad as they thought it would be. So if you take that into consideration, obviously that creates, you know, the need for goods. The need for goods creates jobs that create that. It creates wage increases. And then if you look at the overall savings rate right now, savings are up. People are putting more money in the bank. The more people that have savings, more people we have for a down payment. So overall, we're getting there. And the market's in good shape. You know, I think a lot of people had an idea that there was no way we could replicate 2013. And we're not quite there from a price increase perspective, because we didn't have as much to recover from this year as we did last year. But prices are still up. Inventory is still down. Sales are still up. Properties are selling faster for more money. All good stuff. So if you're considering buying or selling real estate, it's an exciting time, but it's a competitive time. So that's why I want to sit down and go through these numbers so that I can set some expectations for y'all on what's going on. And contrary to what that article said that I read last segment, real estate is local, okay? You have to understand what's going on in your area. And when things happen in your neighborhood that directly affect your home, that's information we need to know. We can't just sweep it under the rug. We have to react to it in some way, shape, or form. So anyways, let me talk to you about what's going on in Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester County. If we look at Berkeley County, and we'll start with single-family homes first, we've had about a 13% increase in new listings, but we've had a 14% increase in closings. In Berkeley County, we've had close to 1,600 homes sell so far this year, and that's single-family homes. And with condos, we've only had a 1% increase in Berkeley County, but we've had close to a 20% increase in new listings. So condos and townhomes, you know, a little bit earlier on, 6 months or so ago, we were seeing very high increases in pricing in Berkeley County for condos and townhomes, because there was a lack of property on the market, and a lot of investors were starting to snatch those up. They just produced great rental income for a low purchase price, which resulted in a very nice return on investment for people. Well, if we look at condos have still risen 6% so far this year compared to the first 7 months of 2013. So that's encouraging news. And single family properties have increased in price 9%. So Berkeley County is doing well. If we look at Berkeley County in 2013, they were obviously lagging Charleston County. But Berkeley County is doing well right now. If we look at Charleston County, which is where we have the majority of our closings, and it's where we take the information and really kind of apply it to the Tri-County area, it's not really the way it should be done. We should talk about each individual county on its own. But because Charleston County represents the majority of sales, I think a lot of real estate agents like to use that as the benchmark, per se, for what's going on in our area. So if you look at single-family homes in Charleston County, we've had about a 1% increase in new listings so far this year compared to the first 7 months of 2013. Closings are up 4%, so not a huge increase in closings, but so far this year, we've sold 3,346 single-family homes as of the end of July, and we've sold a little over 1,000 condos and townhouses, which is an increase over 2013. And again, if you consider the fact that in Charleston County, prices increased 13% in 2013, this is still very encouraging information. And if we look at the pricing in Charleston County, again, more good news. Pricing so far this year for single-family homes is up 7%, and in the condo and townhouse market, it's up 8% compared to 2013. That's big. That's, if you're in the market and you're selling or you're buying, this should be pretty apparent to you. You should be seeing this based on the number of showings you're getting, the number of activity you're getting, or the amount of activity you're getting. Hopefully, if you're on the market, you've had offers or you're under contract in a short amount of time. And of course, your real estate agent is setting the right expectations with you and giving you this information so that you can create a plan and use this information to your advantage. It really is available to all of us. I just go to charlestonrealtors.com and print this stuff off. You guys have access to this information just like I do. It's all free. charlestonrealtors.com, and just go to current reports. That's right there. And you can go to your own specific area, whether it's Mount Pleasant North or Mount Pleasant South or Ladson. Doesn't matter. charlestonrealtors.com. This is the resource that I use to go over this information. I just like to add validity to it by sharing my own experiences. All right, Dorchester County, if you look at single-family homes, we've had about a 5% increase in new listings and close to a 6% increase in closings, which has resulted in a 5% increase in the average sales price. And if you look at the condo and townhouse market, we've had about an 11% increase in new listings. Closings are up 5.2%, and pricing is up about 2%. So Tri-County area, every single category, whether it be single-family detached or single-family attached, is up. Pricing is up. It's a competitive market. So what we're going to talk about next, I'm going to take a break, and what we're going to talk about is the closing process. Properties are going under contract quickly these days. It's going under contract faster than it has in several years. So I want to talk about the closing process, because just because we put the property under contract, whether you're a buyer or a seller, doesn't mean that, we're home scot-free. We've got some work that we need to do, and I'm going to talk about that process when we come back. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Don't forget to reach out to me if you want information on your specific neighborhood and you want that statistical analysis on what's going on in your area. Again, very easy for me to set up the website to go to listingsincharleston.com, or feel free to give me a call, 843-345-1273. Again, this is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. We're going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back.
More stimulating talk on real estate matters with Brian Beatty, next on 1250 WTMA.
The Big Talker, WTMA.
You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back, Charleston. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks again for joining me this morning. I always like to take just a little bit of time every show to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be on air. I really enjoy this program. I enjoy sharing this information and my experiences as an agent that's been in the top 1% of agents here since 2009. It's just nice to be able to get on this program and talk with you all about what I'm experiencing so that I can help you. If there's anything that you take away from this show that better positions you to be an informed buyer, seller, or investor, then I feel like I've done my job. So if there's anything that I can help you with, if you have a specific issue or requirement or goal as it relates to real estate and you'd like to work together, please feel free to give me a call, 843-345-1273. Or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. And I was saying last program that if you want some information on what's going on in your neighborhood, I have a very nice tool that I've just signed up for that sends you a very statistical analysis of what's going on in your neighborhood. You get to see everything for sale, everything that's sold, how long it's taking to sell, the difference between listing price and ask price. A bunch of really cool stuff in this program. So if that's something you think you might be interested in, again, feel free to go to that website, listingsincharleston.com. And if you're thinking about selling your house, click on that Sell Your Home tab. You can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission if I don't sell it in less than 2 months. So again, listingsincharleston.com is the place to go for that. At the very beginning of the program, I had said that it was a very good week, but also a stressful week. And what I'm dealing with right now are several closings that are not going according to plan. They are just not going very smoothly. And I thought that it would be a good idea to talk about all that can potentially go wrong and just all the processes involved with getting a contract to the closing table. Because there's a lot of moving parts when you sign a contract with a buyer or when you sign a contract with a seller. So I want to go through just some of the basics on what we need to accomplish in order to get to the settlement table. And I want to talk about a few things that can go wrong. And I think sometimes I don't do the best job of setting the right expectation with my client that this can be a very stressful process, because it can. And as experienced as I am and as great as my team is in handling all of this stuff and removing all of this stress from your plate as best we can, sometimes there's only so much we can do. And sometimes when we rely on other people to do their job, things don't go as smoothly as you would like. So let's just talk about this for a little while. Let's say that you're a buyer and you put a home under contract. Well, that is a great feeling that you've been able to tie up a home. Hopefully it's one that you love and it's everything that you want. But I'm going to give you a little piece of advice, because sellers can sometimes squash the deal and sometimes things don't work out according to plan. I would also keep up to date with new listings that hit the market. Now, I'm not advocating that you intentionally get out of your contract to leapfrog to another property. I just think it's important that you stay informed with additional inventory, even though you're under contract. You just want to have a backup plan is all it is. Same thing goes for a seller. Just because we have a ratified contract on your home does not mean we should stop showing it to interested buyers. There's nothing wrong with having people come through your house and make a backup offer. You know, a backup offer simply stating that, hey, in the event this deal falls through, as long as you're okay with this price and these terms, then I want to immediately have a ratified contract with you. And that's what a backup offer is. It takes the place of the current contract. You're already agreeing to the price and to the terms. So obviously some information there for buyers and sellers. Just because you have a deal doesn't mean that 100% of the time it's going to get to the closing table. Have a backup plan. Let's talk about some of the contingencies to contracts. First one, of course, being the home inspection. If you're a buyer, it's going to first depend on the type of loan that you want to get. If you want to purchase a property with an FHA or VA loan, and you're putting down very little to no money, then that property is going to have to be in very good condition. There are certain requirements that FHA and VA loans have for the condition of the home. So there can't be any wood rot, can't be any roof leaks, the mechanicals, the electrical, the plumbing, even down to some of the cosmetics have to be in good working order. Otherwise, the appraisal that's done, which kind of rolls an inspection into an appraisal, is going to note those things. And they're going to say, hey, those things need to be fixed in order for us to provide you with a loan. And the reason for that, of course, is let's say that the HVAC system is on its last legs or the roof is leaking. Well, if you're using a VA loan and they are financing 100% of the purchase, you're putting no money down, and we know that the roof has issues, the last thing they want is for you to purchase the property and then find out that you have to replace the roof and you don't have the money to replace the roof, and the property gets damaged and something else happens, and then boom, you can't afford the house anymore, and then you've got to get foreclosed on, and the bank's left with this asset that they paid full value for because they gave you 100% financing, and they've lost all this equity. So part of the reasoning behind all of that. So getting back to the home inspection contingency, when you're a buyer, obviously, you know, when I work with buyers, I want the seller to fix everything. I want them to try and fix as much of it as possible, right? That's my job, is to get you the best deal possible. So normally what I do, and it's no trade secret, I don't mind sharing it on air. When we get a home inspection, I like to put everything that they find on a repair addendum and say to the seller, hey, here is everything that we found. These are the issues that we're up against. We'd like them fixed by a qualified professional. Now, 99 times out of 100, we don't get the full list taken care of. But sometimes when I find a lazy agent or when I find a seller that just hasn't really been coached very well, they'll fix everything. And then that's awesome. I love it when that happens. It happens more than you'd think, actually. So normally I just submit the whole darn thing. Say, hey, this is what we found. These are all the issues with the house. We'd like them fixed. And of course, we have under our belt the understanding that we're not likely going to get everything fixed, but we should at least ask. Now, when we're a seller and we see a home inspection and we see a repair addendum come through, the mentality is totally different. Because if you look at the contract states that we're going to submit a repair addendum based on the mechanicals, the electrical, the plumbing, the foundation. It has to be free of leaks. There can't be any broken windows or things like that. So if I see cosmetic things on a repair addendum, more often than not, we're not going to address cosmetic issues. So that takes me to one important thing, and that is as-is language in a contract. This just happened to me, and it took almost an hour to explain this to everybody because it's a bit unusual. Obviously, we have this practice in our industry where we will write in the contract, especially if we agree to a price that's lower than we want. Let's say as a seller, we're going to say property to be sold in as-is condition, meaning we are not going to make any repairs. If you look at the contract has very specific language about the buyer's rights and the seller's rights when it comes to an inspection. As a buyer, you have the right within a certain amount of time to submit a repair addendum to the seller containing the things that you would like fixed, or you have the ability to negotiate a lower price, or you have the ability to accept it in as-is condition, or you have the ability to walk away. So you either get it fixed, you get a reduction in price, you buy it as is, or you walk away. Those are your rights as a buyer. As a seller, you have the right to agree to those repairs, agree to reduce the price, not agree to do anything, and sell it as is. And then in that case, then the buyer has the choice of saying, all right, well, I'll either take it in its current condition or I'm going to walk away. So when we put as is language in a contract, we are setting the expectation that the buyer basically has two options. They can accept it in its current condition or they can walk away. But that doesn't prevent the buyer from saying to the seller, hey, I know that we agreed to an as-is contract, but these are the items that I want fixed. And if they're not fixed, I'm just going to walk away from the deal. So you've got a choice. You can either stand by the fact that you put as-is on the contract, or I'm going to walk. And so it's very difficult from a real estate agent's perspective to help everybody understand that just because you put as-is language on a contract doesn't necessarily mean that buyer isn't going to try and negotiate with you further. All you're doing is setting the expectation. They have the contractual right to agree to it as is or to walk away. But I think the buyer's mentality is, hey, well, if I'm going to walk away, I might as well give the seller an opportunity to do something about this. Is it worth it to the seller to squash this deal over $1,000 worth of stuff? So it was funny because I had a client and this happened to them. We agreed to an as-is sale. The buyer came back and they said, hey, I know we agreed to as-is, but if you don't take care of these issues, we're walking away. And so the seller said, you know what, fine, we'll do some of these things. And then, of course, the buyer couldn't get financing. We're going to talk about that next segment. But we put it back under contract just this week. And the seller said, hey, I'm not going to make any repairs. I don't care whether we have as-is language on the contract or not, but do not bring me anything on the contract or in a repair addendum that says I have to make repairs. I am not going to make repairs. I'm not going to reduce the price. It's lower than I wanted to sell it for, and I am not going to deal with this buyer if they want to try and strong arm me and reduce my price further through way of repairs. And so my question to him was, okay, so if I receive something from the buyer saying that you want to reduce the price or make these repairs, even though we've set the expectation that it's as is, you're saying you do not want me to send you that information, correct? And he said yes. And I said, okay, good, because as a real estate agent, I can't just not present you with information unless you specifically tell me to. Because a lot of real estate agents have put themselves in bad situations where they're essentially negotiating for their client without their client's consent. And we're going to actually get into that a little bit more next segment, because we're going to continue talking about the closing process and how to handle some of these things. And it'll be our final segment on this show. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Again, feel free to reach out to me if there's anything I can do to help you with real estate in the Low Country. 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show is on 1250 WTMA.
WTMA.
Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks again for joining me this morning. We were talking about the closing process whenever you get a ratified contract on a property, whether you're a buyer or a seller, and just all the stuff that needs to happen from the time that you get that contract signed until the time you actually go to the closing table. So I'm going to finish up that thought in the last few minutes of our show. But if you're considering getting into the real estate market, if this is something that you want more information on, I have a document. It's kind of like a guideline per se that I give to clients that talks about the closing process, talks about what can go right, what can go wrong, how do we prepare. So if you'd like a copy of that, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to give that to you. My number is 843-345-1273. Or feel free to go to my website, listingsincharleston.com, and just send me a message. I'll send you that document. If you're considering buying or selling, log in, send me a quick message. Love to help you out. Again, listingsincharleston.com is the website for that. So let me finish this thought on the closing process. We talked last segment about the home inspection, and we can kind of roll that into the termite inspection as well. The bottom line is, whenever we get to the point in time where the buyer has to submit a repair addendum in response to the home inspection, the buyer has rights, the seller has rights. Putting as-is language in the contract really doesn't do much. It just kind of sets the expectation that the buyer is not going to ask for repairs. But the buyer has the right to back out of the agreement if they're not happy with the condition of the property. The only time a buyer would waive a home inspection contingency, in other words, the only time a buyer would not include a home inspection contingency, is if they're getting it for such a good price that it doesn't matter what the condition of the home is, because they're either going to fully renovate it or they're getting such a sweet deal that they're willing to take the risk and make some of those repairs in the event the inspector finds something that's a little unforeseen. That's not something you can see when you walk through the property. So that's what's going on with the home inspection, and that's what's going on with the as-is language. And the fact of the matter is, as-is really doesn't mean a whole lot contractually, unfortunately. I want to talk about financing, and that's really what I want to end this with, because although there are other things that we can work through, things like the appraisal, and the closing date. Obviously, when we put closing dates on a contract, we put it at the very beginning when we're negotiating the deal, and we select the date that we believe to be mutually agreeable. And then we work together with the lender and the inspectors and the attorney and the insurance guy and everybody else that's involved to try and meet that deadline. But sometimes things happen where that deadline we're going to go past it. Sometimes we're way ahead of schedule and we can close earlier. But more often than not, closing dates need to be pushed. Contingencies to the contract need to be extended. And it's never really good when that happens unless we've got agreement on both sides of the table that it's okay to extend these contingencies. So let's talk about financing. On the contract, the buyer has a certain amount of time to apply for financing, and they have a certain amount of time from ratification of the contract to get full loan approval. So obviously, when we submit a contract, I would prefer that the buyer have a pre-approval rather than a pre-qualification. A pre-approval is a little bit deeper into the process of checking the credit and verifying income and debt obligations and so on and so forth, rather than just a pre-qual, which is kind of like a snapshot of what this buyer looks like financially. Pre-approval is much better. And of course, if they're paying cash, we want to see a proof of funds letter. I want some sort of bank statement or a money market account or something that says that they have the funds necessary and liquid to close on the property. But what I see all the time with financing, and it drives me nuts, quite honestly, because it's one of the things in our industry that I really get frustrated with. Because if we have a contract that says that the buyer has a certain amount of time to get financed, and then we go past that date, and then the buyer says, oh, I'm sorry, I can't get a mortgage, so I can't buy the house, but I still want my earnest money back. That to me is a big problem. I think that it's black and white in the contract that you had up until this date to get financed. You couldn't. It's an issue for us as the seller because we've had our home off the market. We've been waiting for you to get your financing approval so that we can close on the property. And financing is usually the very last thing to happen because it takes the longest amount of time. Depending upon the lender you use, it could be 10 days, it could be 45 days. It just depends on the bank that you're working with. But the fact of the matter is, many times, and I hate it when this happens, a buyer will not get financing, and it happens after they're supposed to get full loan approval. And they'll send the contract to an attorney, and the attorney will look at it, and they'll say, well, the contract says it's contingent upon financing, and the buyer should be able to get their earnest money back. And then the seller's attorney will say, well, they had this amount of time to get financed, and they didn't. So they're not getting their earnest money back. And so the only way really to resolve it, if the buyer and the seller can't come to an agreement, is to go to court. And everybody always says, oh, well, the judge is just going to look at it and they're just going to split it 50-50. So you might as well just split it 50-50. And frankly, if I'm representing a seller and we find out a few days before closing, after the buyer has had time to get full loan approval, that they can't get financing, my stance 100% of the time, unless it's through no fault of the buyer, is that the seller should get that earnest money. The seller's the one that's kept the property off the market. We can't sell it to other buyers while we're under contract with you, and you can't afford it. So you put up that earnest money as consideration, and yes, there is a risk that you lose it. When you default on contracts, you run the risk of not getting your earnest money back. That's what it's for. So financing is this huge issue, and it's kind of this gray area in real estate contracts where sometimes people look at it and they say, yep, the buyer's in default, seller gets the earnest money. And then it seems like the other half of the time, they say, well, the buyer had it contingent upon financing, and because they couldn't get financing, they should get their earnest money back, regardless of whether or not there was a deadline in the contract, because the language is somewhat vague. So it's this issue that I've run into, obviously, many, many times. You do the best you can to protect your client, and to, if you're a buyer agent, put them in touch with the right people so they can get a pre-approval letter. Or if you're a seller, you check that buyer's credentials. The contract gives me the right as a listing agent to call the buyer's lender and ask whether or not they are creditworthy, and to find out and to ask questions and to probe and to determine whether or not this is a legitimate buyer. The contract allows me that right. But all the time we get lenders that say, oh, well, that's confidential and I'm not going to share any information with you. And, whatever, that's fine. But I'm trying to make an informed decision for my client as to whether or not this buyer can actually get approved for financing. Sometimes it's very cut and dry. Sometimes it's very tricky. An example being a condo development where there's litigation or there's a special assessment or something like that. Those are tricky deals to get done. And sometimes when financing doesn't get approved, it's through no fault of the buyer. It's just that they get through the underwriting process, and then some processor says, nope, you know what? We are not comfortable with this loan. And sometimes things like that happen. The bottom line here is that there's a lot that can go wrong in a real estate transaction. You just need to protect yourself. And the best way to do that is to be informed and to work with a real estate agent that understands these issues. There's a lot more I can talk about on this, but I'll tell you what, I'm out of time. If there's anything I can do to help you with your real estate goals or needs, please call me 843-345-1273 or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll hear you next weekend.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning from 8 till 9. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.